today to do the second video, another live recording here regarding the topic of the 7 years of tribulation. This is the 7 years of tribulation part 2. And I wanted to give everybody like a chance to ask questions because in my last recording, there were several people watching, but I felt like I covered so much that I wanted to really give people like a chance to, ask me questions if they have any questions regarding the topic. I did make also some extensive notes, so going into this, I may be doing some quotes. The Bible verses that I had previously pulled were from Bible.org. I am today going to be quoting Brian Dennert. He's a pastor as well. Before I jump in, I do want to say thank you to Trish McHugh. I think that's her name. Shout out to her because she recently donated. All donations are really appreciated this time. I still do not have a full-time job. I, basically survive, kind of just scrape by on donations and if I book any readings. So all readings, if you wanted to book a reading, really keep me going. All donations keep me going. All the links to PayPal, Venmo, Cash App are going to be in the description box below. You can also check out my website for the link to PayPal, specifically oracledaphne.com. If you want to get a reading, you can check out my website again to do that. For those of you who can't tell, I am still have been getting over like another being unwell again, basically, within like a month's time period. So all positive vibes sent my way I really appreciate. But yeah, I sound kind of congested and I am still congested, but I wanted to come back on here and do this video just because I feel so passionately about it and I didn't want too much time to go by where I'm talking about the same topic again and people are going to be like, why are you talking about that? So I do want to check my audio really quickly. Okay, there's that. And I do want to basically, before I jump in, talk about, and this came up in my last recording, but I want to make it kind of more clear. It's so funny. My hair looks so funny today. I want to make it more clear of kind of like where this is coming from. For those of you who haven't watched me and you're new, I am psychic with all of the clairvoyances. I have pretty much all of the psychic gifts, and I have been reading the tarot since 2009, so a really long time. I've read for over 500 people, I just have an extensive, background in understanding all things psychic and spiritual, but I didn't really come into it until I was, in my 30s. So the thing about it is that I am still learning, and I normally don't go into religious topics, and I don't normally go into stuff that's going to kind of put me at risk or in harm's way at all. So doing this video and the other 7 years of tribulation video is kind of different for me, but it came up for me. I felt very strongly about it. I wanted to record it, so I do the things that I feel called to do, and that's that's my main deal. So originally, before I did any research into this topic, I was thinking that, and it was just a feeling, it was more of just like my overall feeling that the 7 years of tribulation, or what you consider to be a period of tribulation, would come about as a result of the pandemic. That basically all of the problems that have yet to come with all of the stuff that happened during the last 3 years would cause a kind of upset with people that would cause, in my mind, that to me is what the tribulation is really about. Now, the funny thing is, it's not funny, but in looking at the Bible verses and things like that, and looking at things more, I realized that that the astrology really matches that whole vibe of being upset. And there's going to be more than one thing to be upset over. But I feel like originally that is how I saw it. And after doing the research, after looking at it and going, all of these other things made sense. So I would encourage you, if you have not seen my first video where I went through Revelations, to check that out, because that's going to be, that should be interesting to some of you who maybe not used to a psychic really going into some of those things. So that was like one of my first points that I wanted to make about where I was coming from and how I was originally seeing the tribulation. I originally saw it as a period of deep upset, a time of where people were going to have to really reflect on their actions and really reflect on what was going on, and a time of great awakening, but also a time of, just almost like, not raging against the machine, but just kind of just like this, I kind of feel like it's almost like people are like, raising their head towards the sky and asking the question, why? Why is this happening? Why is this happening to me? In some way, there's an element of victimization, or, feeling like people have been, victimized. But again, going back to, people feeling angry, I feel like the anger is going to come from being lied to. Like, that's ultimately, people get pissed off when they're lied to. So I feel like that's part of the tribulation. Now, I also want to talk about, we talked in my last video about the rapture specifically, okay? And, I think for a long time, especially in the Christian community, the rapture is going to be for people who are anticipating a big event, or in the 7 years of tribulation to result in a big big event which they would be then saved from. And I feel like over time the church has really given this impression to people, myself included, that if everybody believes in Christ, that, we're going to be saved in the end. And to go back to Pastor Brian Denner, he's a pastor that I had reached out to in my research. He had said that it's not specific. There is nothing in his, that he has seen, which in the Bible that ever has pinpointed exactly when the 7 years of tribulation would be. And he mentioned, and I just want to mention here and quote him here, that there's this element of the unexpected, right? That the 7 years of tribulation would come at a time when people weren't expecting it. And to quote him, Mark 13:32, but concerning that day or that hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven. Okay, which I find interesting, because he I had reached out to him and I wasn't sure if I could quote him, but he gave me permission to quote him, and he is really, really great. And he also mentioned this point that there is this element of the unexpected with the tribulation, and I find that interesting. Going back to what I want, like I wanted to make this point with the astrology. The astrology is on a clock. I mean, it is like, okay, this is when Saturn goes into here. This is when Jupiter goes into here. We can look way, 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 way ahead, and we can look way, 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 way back and see when the planets are going to be in certain signs and what's going to happen when. It's not a big surprise, okay? But I will say that I did mention that the North Node was going to be going into the sign of Pisces. And Pisces is technically the end of the zodiac. It's the end. Which I find fascinating because it really does match up with this, the timeline of 2025 to 2032. Pisces, the North Node is going to be in Pisces in 2025. So if we were looking at it from specifically like, okay, is this the end times or is this not? I would say this is the end, quote unquote, times. Because the North Node's in the sign of Pisces. But I will also say that, Christians, again, going back, have been led to believe that there's going to be one main big event that they're going to be saved from, okay? And that all they have to do is believe in Christ, and they don't have to worry about being saved, okay, like, or dying. It's interesting because that has those points, okay, like if you do this, then you will be saved. That was really pushed during the pandemic, okay? That was heavily pushed because I think it's easy for people, and I feel like I absolutely believe that there's the beings that are in control of things really were using that because people can get easily swayed to think it's like it's like a scam, like someone shows up in your drawer and says, if you just do XYZ, you don't have to worry about this other stuff. So just go ahead and do this and you'll be fine. And the person looks at them and goes, all I need to do is do that. That's it. That's all I need to do. Oh, well, that's easy. People do what's easy. People do what's convenient. People do what they're told to do. Okay. So there's this issue that, I feel like is going to become very apparent, that people did what they were supposed to do or they were told to do, and there's going to be repercussions from that. I also think that this idea of, there being that the end times is going to lead up to the end of the planet, or like the absolute end of Mother Gaia, okay, or the absolute end of humanity, and I don't believe that that's going to happen. Okay, I don't believe that the end times will really ever talking about that. My guides showed me, and I took some notes. The Bible, looking back, during the time that it was talking about these things written, there was a lot of war at that time. And at that time, I believe that, whatever was written about like an end point was the end of their, them anticipating war, them anticipating that they were going to die. And as far as this other stuff, I absolutely do believe that the Bible was doctored. That there's been doctoring, and that whatever that's in there that says Um, Going back to like Revelations 13:11-18, about people wouldn't be able to buy and sell. They had to show that they had a mark. All of that to me has been doctored. That's all doctoring, to suit the agenda. Okay, to suit the NWO. That's all that it really, as far as I'm concerned, is talking about. Or that's what it's really about. Essentially, the fact that, back in the day, people didn't have a 9 to 5. They weren't required to do anything in order to live. The whole idea about having a job or being able to have a job came about later in time. Okay. And let's not even get into like women being able to do whatever, this is all modern, that women were actually able to do this. Traditionally, going back in history, women had the children and took care of their family. They weren't required to have a job. It just, so this is all, to me, this whole business about having to have a mark is really about the VAX and the CHIP and any IMPLANT that may be required of people in the future. And I want to say this, I'm going to say this really strongly here. This is very strongly. Anybody who thinks that they can get those things, especially going forward, okay, with any CHIP or IMPLANT, which to me talks about the I call it the hybrid robotic human robotics model, which is like the next, part of the next steps. People that are going in that direction will pass. And going back to what the rapture is, to me, the rapture is a large amount of people passing. And because, going back through what I said through Revelations, the parts in Revelations which talked about, a volcano, fire, a massive amount of people passing, I feel like the rapture is really anytime a large amount of people pass, which could happen from natural disaster. That's what it's talking about. It's not, I don't feel like it's specific to just one point in time, although, as a follow-up from what I said, I originally said that the rapture was going to come as a result of the pandemic. And that's the beginning. To me, that's like the first wave. But this is not also the first time in history that there's been a quote-unquote rapture. And going back to Christians might actually believe that the rapture is specifically a time or when in some way God's going to save everybody and take everybody who believes in them away. And that's, no, what really is going to happen is that if people continue on doing what they normally do, get whatever put into their body, and don't really think about it as they're being manipulated and controlled, then, essentially there's not going to be a lot of people left on this planet because people will need to avoid doing those things in order to live. That's the bottom line. Don't know what it looks like. I don't really have an audience right now. I don't see anybody in the chat. I was really hoping today that there'd be some people that I might be able to answer questions for. Okay, going back to Oh, okay. So I want to talk about this really quickly. Um, I was thinking when I was doing my research for this second video, I was thinking about, okay, well, what's the most important thing? Like, what is it that I need to really convey, or what is it that I really want to convey in this video? And um, I wanted to really convey, like, the first thing that I wanted to convey was that we've, as humans, we have been able to survive war before. We also have been able to survive famine before. Um, yeah, and if we're looking at it from that perspective of, okay, we know that some of these things most likely are going to come to pass. How can we be prepared for them rather than being in a place of fear? I think that to me is like the takeaway. Like I thought back to, when there was an NUKE, World War II, right? Going back to that time. And for some people, they are so far away from that time um, that they have not experienced that time. Like they did not experience that. And like my grandparents' Depression era, they're no longer around to share what happened during that time, what their life was like during that time. For those of you who do know, like that depression era generation of what they had to go through in order to survive and what their approach was on life and how they were able to really, do what they could with very little. Like my grandparents were very frugal, like my entire life, like so frugal. But they were able to get out a lot out of their life and their simple things in life that they did. And I think if we took a page out of their book, we could easily go back and say, okay, well, they made it. They were able to make it through that time. So I do want to tell people that in some way, it's not necessarily a message of hope, but like it's a message of looking at it from that perspective of, okay, like how did they make it? And maybe trying to take a page out of their book. And I did a couple other videos of talking about how to be prepared and like how to think about things. And so I would encourage everybody, I'm going to leave the link below. I'm going to encourage everybody to look at that. And, it's not just like, and I say this with kindness, okay? Because like even myself, I don't have the ability to really get as prepared as I would like to be. But there's a lot of people who are doing nothing to be prepared. And going into this time period, I would caution everybody. To me, this is like a caution. I feel like people that are prepared, even a small amount, will be able to make it through this time. But the people who are really not prepared at all, where let's just say a meteor does hit in 2029 and the power goes out for an extended period of time for the entire planet. You know, what would people do then if they couldn't maybe do online shopping or like log into work or collect a paycheck? If they had savings, maybe they could do it. So these are all things to think about. With regards to this. Okay, so I want to get into. I want to talk about the a little bit more tricky topic of what exactly is the BEAST, and what does that mean for people? In doing my research, my guide had said that Nero was the BEAST of the Bible of those times. And I have to tell you that anytime the word Babylon shows up, um, anything written was really talking about that time period. So, but let's just get, let's just break it down. Okay, so let's just say Nero was the beast of that time. Well, we have the Antichrist, which in some way is the beast of this time. But also, there's more than just one issue. Because we've got the beings that control this planet, that are on planet, and then we have beings that can also control this planet who are off planet. And then originally we have the Earth issue, Earth being issue versus the water being issue. And then we also have the what I call the large consciousness beasts, like the Christ consciousness, like the consciousness beasts, the beings that are so large that we are fearful of them. We give our power to them. They're able to control us. They're able to manipulate us. They're able to lie to us. And we don't even question their authority, because they're larger than us in this way of their very, just being around, their very consciousness permeates everything that we do. So we immediately give our power away to these beings. And so there's a lot of question in my mind, okay, about the education of people when it comes to the BEAST. Like, people like to think that all that we're dealing, and simplify it, all that we're dealing with is just, quote unquote, the devil, okay? And that's interesting. That's interesting of itself, because if it was that simple, then I don't think that there would be actually any problem. If it was just one being or one entity that was bad, again, it's just too simple. And so I wrote down my definition of a BEAST is a being that wants to control the planet via lies, manipulation, IMPLANTS, VAX, CHIPS, and there's astrological influences. There have been, I think it was Astrology that did a video that talked about the Capricornian influences at this time. Okay. So we've got that. This is a nice way to really talk about how there's multiple influences at this time. It's not just one being. Okay. I have to say that. Now, there was another thing that I wanted to talk about, which is actually the tarot. Because I do believe that there's certain beings that do things for disclosure purposes. It's sort of like hiding things in plain sight. So it's like they disclose, okay, this is how it's going to be, this is how it's set up, and now they know about it. So if they've got a problem with it, then they can fight me on it. Basically, that's the way the dark is. Okay, so again, they disclose, they say this is how it is. Now it's up to you to make the right choice. But again, it's really kind of manipulative, isn't it? Right? Because the people aren't really being told exactly what's going on. they're being told, just they're being disclosed information which then they have to think about on their own, and for whatever reason, because via lack of education, lack of imagination, lack of intuition, which by the way, it's very hard when somebody is in the space of fear to really tune in. They just don't. Okay, when somebody is in a place of fearfulness, they don't. And we have been taught, the majority of people, okay, have been taught regarding spirituality, okay, for years, okay. Going way back, like my grandmother was believing that she was going to be saved because she was a Christian, and this is years, okay, like, she was born in, I don't know, like the 20s, okay, 1920 or something, and so, like, the fact that she believed that means that this has been going on for a very long time, okay, and people are not given the alternative perspective. But again, they're also in that place of fear, and they are taught to give their power away. The other thing, okay, so another thing, this is like major, one of the biggest things that I wanted to talk about today, is I find it fascinating that people do not know how to speak their truth, number one. People are so afraid to be in a space of power, number two. Some people don't even, like, won't light a candle. Like, they can't even do that one step. They can't call in the light because they don't think that it's going to do any good. So they don't do it. Okay. It baffles my mind that people are trained and taught that they don't have any power. Okay. That they're trained, that's what we're told. And that's also an untruth. And so, people, who have even a tiny fraction of an imagination, I challenge you, anybody who's watching, I challenge you to take your power back. To say, you know what? Maybe Elizabeth's right. Maybe what I say does have some weight in the universe. And maybe calling in the light and saying the words out loud will actually do something. And maybe saying to the dark to back off this planet will actually do something. But the thing about it is that for the majority of people, they are going to watch and they're going to think, oh my God, the 7 years of tribulation is going to happen, and go into a place of fear. And then they're not actually going to be empowered to be prepared to do any light work that might actually push the shit off, or that might actually make a difference to the planet. So those are the things that I really wanted to say today. Let me go over my notes and see if there's anything else. Nobody else has come on and asked me any questions. I think I pretty much mentioned, there is one person watching. It looks like, just want to make sure that I'm answering questions. If there's anybody who's watching, if there's one person watching, if you have any questions. Oh, I did want to say something about dematerialization. Okay. So I did briefly bring this up, in my other video, where, in the other video I mentioned how I didn't think that we were going to just be taken and go through the dematerialization process and saved by some ET beings that have that technology. I do believe ET beings have the technology to dematerialize, meaning they have the ability to go from a 3D to 5D and back again. Okay. And without even flinching. Okay. They have the technology. Here on this planet, we do not have the ability to dematerialize. Okay. I think that what I really also wanted to say was that we don't get the out. The beings that are in control, that want everybody to think that they're going to get saved somehow by being, God or whatever, and want us to give our power away, and don't really, like, people, again, there's a education issue where people don't really understand that there's different waves to our brain, that we are in a simulation. The reason things appear to be a certain way is because of our brain and how we see things. So the whole dematerialization thing is interesting. And again, we don't, the way it is set up, and it's set up a certain way, we don't get to go, because we are in the reincarnation cycle. Meaning, we come here, we are born as 3D human beings from a spiritual form, and then we die. We age, and then we die. And then we go back into spirit, into the containment field. We don't get to go through lovely dematerialization and go to different planets and have the different experiences, and get out of our Earth in a reincarnation cycle. Okay, maybe a few, but that's not how it's set up. So for any being to say that it's set up differently, where suddenly the rapture is going to be, or there's going to be everybody who believes in Christ is going to be saved, and then we're going to get dematerialized off this planet. I call it dematerialized, but we're going to get taken off this planet in a spaceship. It's just not the way it works. It's just not the way it works. So, but yeah, there is that. I wanted to mention, yes, of course, there is that technology out there. We don't have that technology at this time. Maybe we do, but it's deeply hidden, and I'm sure there are beings on this planet that are using it, but for their own purposes. Let's just put it that way. I think I covered pretty much everything that I had wanted to today. I think I did want to talk about too, if I'm going back through my notes, that the whole thing about history repeating itself. I did mention that in my other video. About the whole, nobody knows when exactly the end is going to be. So it's this sort of distant off thing where the 7 years of tribulation is this distant thing where nobody can say, okay, well, it's 2025 to 2032. And by me saying that, then it's pinpointing it and going, and then people go into instant fear of oh my God, that's when it's going to be, and I don't want to die. And they go into how can I prevent dying? And the whole thing about the whole preventing dying thing is really interesting, because again, it talks, well, there's been other discussions about life and death, in the fact that, everybody dies. And, there's all this fear, to me, there's all this fear driven into the Bible about dying. And then, of course, the beautiful, the real selling point is that God's prepared this special place. And again, it's to get people to think that, that it's not, what it really is. And what it really is we are in a reincarnation cycle that in some way we're stuck in. And it's not like a trap per se, but it's very difficult to get out of. And in order to get out of the reincarnation cycle, our energy has to become really, really high. And then, even then, when you complete your karma and you get really, really high, you could pass at any time, and your what's it called? You become more different than other people, so other people don't like you, and the dark doesn't like you either, because then it's like you've beat their game, you've beat their system, and which you're not really supposed to know about, and you're not really supposed to be telling other people about it either. So again, that's how it really is. I hate to say that, but you know, for some people, this is not going to come as a shock. Other people, it would be different than what you're taught to believe. So I do think that there's going to be, my guide showing me this to talk about this. Basically, certain points in the soon-to-be history, 2025 to 2032, where things will become really, really hard. Where, unless people prepared, then they will pass. Prepared mentally also for this period of time, because it will become very, very hard. And it's the hardness factor which I think a lot of people will become very angry about. Because up until this time, especially like, you know, pre-pandemic, okay, it was a time in which really of peace, where people had pretty much a decent, healthy amount of freedoms. People had the ability to travel and go places and do things that they wanted to do. People had, you know, savings. They had, you know, they were putting their kids through school. You know, so the school system wasn't totally effed. You know, there was a lot of things that were actually really positive that were happening, that that gave people like a sense of, I don't know, peace, serenity, control. And then the pandemic happened, and I think that's, in some way, that's the dark agenda's way, the dark's way of saying, hey guys, like, this is a reality check. Like, this is a reality check point. This is a test to see how you guys are going to make it. And I think people are really, you know, not prepared for what's to come. And I think whatever people can do to be prepared mentally for what is to come will be the best thing for them. A lot of this does tie into the robotics future timeline. And so I'm not going to talk too much about that. I did talk about that in one of my other videos, so I'm going to leave the link below for that. And hopefully, you know, if you guys have any questions, I can do a third video where I talk about things a little bit more. I had wanted to go into like more ancient stuff, like more history stuff, for this video, but I just did not have the time to get all of my notes organized. So I think I'm going to leave off here. I think that I covered pretty much what I did want to talk about today, and hopefully you guys have gotten something out of it, and hopefully it's been eye-opening, but also helpful in some way. That's my goal. And I wish everybody lots and lots and lots and lots of positive energy and many blessings to everybody who's watching. And yeah, I wish the best for everybody. And I really hope, for humanity's sake, that this you know, period of time doesn't happen, but I do feel like it's coming, and I do feel that there are certain things that are coming that are going to be challenging. And I think that if people are prepared, or at least have the mindset that there's challenges that are going to be coming, I think that will be helpful to them to some degree. So I send everybody big hugs, big kisses, and I will talk to you guys again soon. I wish you guys all the best. All right, take care. Bye.